T. Welcome to the Command Post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. We got a jam-packed show tonight, man. Lots to get to, a number of different topics. Ron is doing the world tour. He does this every year on Radio Row. This year, he has an actual reason why he's doing Radio Row. Last year, he was campaigning for a new quarterback. So he was doing all of the different studio shows. He's doing them again. He's on Radio Row. He's meeting with people. Ron's a very personable guy. I think if nothing else, if you've gathered nothing else from the last 3 years of him doing this, you should have gathered that he's a really personable guy. And he's very likable, comes off as a guy that you run a root for, which makes it somewhat tough here as a fan because he's a good dude. You know, we watched this dude beat cancer, right? Still come to work, still gut it out. But at the end of the day, results are what matter the most, and you have to be able to separate the two. Liking a guy, I can't speak for you. I liked Jay Gruden, but he wasn't a good enough coach. This next year is going to be huge for Ron because this is going to go a long way in determining whether he's going to be the guy here long term or not. But that notwithstanding, Ron is actually being awarded the Salute to Service Award from USAA, and he's been, promoting that all week. So that's the reason that he's been on a lot of these shows. Not that he needs a reason. We saw that last year. But anyway, because he's been on all these shows, because he's doing his rounds and making his rounds, there's a lot of quotes out there. There have been a lot of discussions, a lot of dialogue, a lot of things that we can sink our teeth into, okay, that he has said. And so I told you guys before any of this stuff started to surface, early in the week, I said, guys, understand that our offseason begins next week. Officially, the offseason doesn't begin until the start of the new league year in March. Our offseason unofficially begins next week. I said, we're going to hire an offensive coordinator next week. Ron has pretty much said, we're going to hire an offensive coordinator next week. So I said that before he came out and said it, but I told you, they're just waiting to interview one more guy. There are no more candidates other than Eric Bieniemy. There are no more candidates. They've already interviewed 6 guys. There'll be a 7th, and then they're going to make a decision. Okay? Ownership change. A lot of people are trying to push that thing through as fast as possible. I don't blame anyone. I told you personally, I don't care. Just make sure that it gets done this offseason. Really don't care if it happens 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now. Just make sure that it happens before we get to training camp. Because honestly speaking, I don't think it's going to impact anything that we give a damn about on the field. New ownership isn't coming in, getting rid of any coaches, spicing things up with the players on the field. So honestly, I don't care as long as it happens before we get to training camp. Treat it like a franchise tag player. You've got until July 16th to work out a deal with that guy, or else he's playing on the tag for the entire year. Well, they've got until July to find a way to get Dan the hell out of here, and he's already made it known. Man wants $7 billion, okay? Wants $7 billion for the franchise, and he says, hey, I'll sign wherever you want me to sign as long as I get my 7. He'll get it. He'll get $7 billion. I think the first round of bids stopped at 6.3. And Jeff Bezos hasn't even entered the discussion yet. He hasn't entered the chat. He'll get 7. And I'm like, hey, look, whatever we got to do, if I got to put in to help you get to 7, I will put in. Damn it. Everybody can contribute. I'll do my part. So we got to get him the hell out of here. And I think that starts next week as well. But a lot of interesting topics have surfaced because Ron is doing his radio role. He's making his rounds. He's doing sit-down interviews, one-on-ones with people that are beat writers. Ben Stanek had an article in The Athletic. He's talked to John Keim on and off the record. Nikki Javala just had a great piece in the Washington Post that was very informative that we're going to kind of parse through tonight. So let's talk about some of the topics at hand tonight that we're going to discuss. I really want to hear how you guys feel on some of these topics because I think there's some decisions that have to be made. I don't think some of them are as tough as, he's trying to make them out to be. Others, maybe a little bit more difficult. So you've got Chase Young in the fifth-year option. I'll give you my thoughts on that. I'll read you what Ron has said, and then I'll give you my thoughts on how I feel about that. You've got Daron Payne getting his extension. I'll just tell you right now, you know what? I'll save that. So Daron Payne's extension. I want to start the show talking about Eric Bieniemy as the #1 target for offensive coordinator. And you've also got Sam Howell, and the discussion around him being QB1. And I think I can extend that conversation out to Taylor Heineke as well. He's also doing his rounds with the media. He was on the Pat McAfee show. I want to say it was today, if not today, yesterday. I also think I saw him quoted somewhere else. So Heineke's making his rounds as well. So there's a number of topics that we can discuss tonight. So let's start with Eric Bieniemy. So I haven't really told you exactly how I feel. I've just told you what I think, what I thought they were going to do. And have I led you astray? I told you that Anthony Lynn was #1 on my list of guys that they were going to interview. I also had Ken Zampese on my list. I made a list of 7 guys, and I think Zampese was 4 on the list, and Anthony Lynn was #1 on the list. They're so predictable. Anyway, I really want Eric Bieniemy now. And I don't really know what we're going to get. No one really truly knows what his style is as a play caller. We can only assume that he's learned from the master, Andy Reid, and he, being the student, is going to take the things that he has learned from master, and that's probably not a good, that's not a good way to put that. Teacher. Let's go with teacher on this one. He's the student, the pupil. Andy Reid is the teacher. He's learned a lot from Andy Reid. But what is his style exactly? We do not know. We are not sure. What is his identity? Remember, at his core, Eric Bieniemy is a running back. Played in the league for a number of years. Played in college at the University of Colorado. Running back is his position of choice. So understand that while he's calling plays and he came from Kansas City, or he's going to be coming from Kansas City rather, and they have more of a passing background, Eric Bieniemy, at his core, still a running back. So what does that mean? Has Andy Reid rubbed off on him to the point where he's more of a passing guy that, runs to set up passes to set up the run? Or is at his core, he still wants to run the football and that sets up the pass? I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know. We don't know. Honestly, nobody knows because he's never been an offensive coordinator. by himself. So I'm intrigued to the point where I'm like, I want him now. Like at first I was like, look, I don't really care. As long as you don't hire this guy, or that guy, I'm fine, right? Well, most of those guys have been eliminated. They've shrunk the pool to the. I told you I've shrunken the pool myself. I shrunk the pool to 4 guys. I said it's either going to be Eric Bieniemy, Anthony Lynn, Ken Zampese, or Pat Shermer. Those are the 4 guys that I think have a legitimate opportunity to get this job. I could be wrong, and somebody else could sneak in and as a dark horse and get the job. But excuse me. Ultimately, I think those are the 4 guys that are really being considered. They want Eric Bieniemy. Ron really wants Eric Bieniemy. That's why he's waited this long. They didn't wait this long because I just want to talk to him. They really want Eric Bieniemy. The Ravens, I don't know if they're as hell-bent on getting their hands on Bieniemy as we are. They may just want to talk to him and see where his head is, and if they really like what he's saying, they may want to offer him the job. But they've done their due diligence as well. I think it's either going to be Bieniemy or Todd Monken in Baltimore. I think they've already narrowed their search to 2 guys. And they just got to talk to Bieniemy just like we have to talk to him. So I also over this period of time of waiting for the Super Bowl to come and pass, have developed this obsession with us getting our hands on Eric Bieniemy now. Before, I really didn't care, to be honest with you. Now I'm like, no, I want him here. And I want to see if this guy's any good. And I want it to be here. I mean, what do we have to lose? We really don't have anything to lose. If he's really good, despite whatever may be going on around him, if he's really good, it'll benefit Sam Howell because at the end of the day, next year, for all intents and purposes, and of course, I want to win, and I would love to win big. It'll be the first year under new ownership. You're trying to get a new stadium done. There are a lot of things that go into next year. Next year will feel like a breath of fresh air, to feel like we've had the weight of the world lifted off of our shoulders. Now we can just enjoy football like the other 31 teams around the league can with their teams. We don't have to worry about, is an article going to come out this week bashing the owner and the team? Is there going to be another investigation? Like, we don't have to worry about that shit anymore. Like, we get to actually do what the other teams in the league do and their fans do. Just enjoy it for what it is. Entertainment. Your team is one of 32 that's going to have a game on Sunday, and we don't have to worry about is something going to come out on Wednesday or Thursday. Now we just get to enjoy the game like everybody else. It's going to be great, right? But it's a 1-year audition for everybody. So if Bieniemy comes in and crushes it, he's probably going to end up being the head coach anyway. If he doesn't, we're getting rid of everybody anyway. It doesn't matter. So we've got absolutely nothing to lose. And because of that, I want to see what Eric Bieniemy is all about. Because next year, even if we don't win, the biggest thing we can do is find out if Sam Howell is any good or not. We could go 6-11 next year. The bottom could fall out of this thing. Ron could get fired in week 15 next year, for all I know. But if Sam Howell is balling, let's say the reason that we're at the time of Ron being fired, let's say we're 5-10. Matter of fact, we're 4-10. Bieniemy's promoted to interim head coach, and we finish up the season winning 2 out of our final 3 games, and we end up 6-11. let's say that the defense, and maybe Jack's already been fired, or maybe they just said, to hell with it, we're getting rid of everybody at the end of the season anyway. Let's say the defense is the reason that this team underachieves. For once, the offense is actually balling. We're scoring 26.3 points a game, and we've had a couple of outbursts throughout the course of the season where we scored 38. We had a 39-pointer. We had a 43-point game, and then we were always right around 27, 29. There was one or two games where we didn't have the day what we wanted, 22, and then there was a 17 in there. But we've been a pretty explosive offense all season long, and Sam Howell's been spearheading the attack. Unfortunately, that game where we scored 29, we gave up 33. Unfortunately, the game where we scored 38, we gave up 41. Let's say it's one of those types of seasons. But Sam is showing everybody he can play ball. Great. We know we got us a quarterback. Even if the same coordinator isn't here, even if Eric Bieniemy gets a head coaching job, we need to find out about Sam Howell. We want the guy that's going to give him the best chance to succeed. I liken it to Josh Allen in Buffalo. The best thing that happened to Josh Allen was Brian Daboll showing up in Buffalo and getting Josh Allen to the point where we were looking at him as one of the best quarterbacks in the league, in the MVP discussion. Now, Brian Daboll moves on, gets a head coaching job. They promote Ken Dorsey, and Josh Allen takes a step back. But we're not questioning whether Josh Allen can do it. We're not questioning, is Josh Allen still elite? We're questioning Ken Dorsey. We know Josh Allen can do it. That's where I want to get to with Sam Howell. Is I don't care who the offensive coordinator is. We've seen that he can do it. But we need the right guy to pull that out of him. I think that guy is Eric Bieniemy. Or at least I'd like to find out if it's him or not. Thus, I want Eric Bieniemy now. I don't want him going to Baltimore. He's not going back to Kansas City. I want him here in Washington. And so they need to do whatever it takes. I heard something like he wants like $2.5 million. I don't know what offensive coordinators get paid in this league. What's the annual? What's the highest paid coordinator? I think Dan Quinn is the highest paid coordinator in football right now. Could be just defensive, but I thought I read somewhere because he came back again this year, didn't take a job. I thought I read somewhere that Dan Quinn remains the highest paid coordinator in football. I don't know what he's being paid annually, nor do I care. I heard that Bieniemy was looking for roughly $2.5 million a year. I don't care. I don't know what the going rate is for an offensive coordinator, but I don't care. Make it happen. And what's crazy is until Ron's gone, until Dan's gone, all of these decisions still have to run through Dan. He's still got to balance the checkbook, so to speak. So that's pretty interesting. At the end of the day, I don't give a shit what it takes. I want Eric Bieniemy here. Case closed. Make it happen. I'm telling you this. I'm speaking it into existence. He's going to be our next offensive coordinator. I've already gone on record as to say that this is going to be the biggest offseason in franchise history. We started it off with a bang by getting rid of Scott Turner. They're going to sell. Daniel Snyder is going to sell this organization and rid us of his dark cloud that he had hovering over this organization for the last 23 years. And then we're going to get a guy that I think can come in and help turn around what has been a morbidly bad offense for the last 3 seasons. Really going back until Kirk was here in 2017. It's been a bad offense since 2018, pretty much. So this offseason is full head of steam. And I think we're gonna check off a lot of boxes this offseason. Scott Turner fired, check. Hire really good offensive coordinator, not a retread, not some rando, not one of Ron's boys, but a real legitimate ideal candidate for the job, check. That's what I'm hoping, at least. Dan, sell the goddamn franchise, check. That's at least what I'm hoping. Daron Payne, re-signed, check. At least that's what I'm hoping. Cam Curl, re-signed, check. At least that's what I'm hoping. Kendall Fuller, restructured, check. Get him on a 3-year deal, right? These are things that I think are going to be huge moves made this offseason. So I'm hoping that we continue on the path that we're on, because we're on a really good path right now. We're getting shit done. And we get Eric Bieniemy here in Washington. I think it can happen. Make it happen. Damn it, make it happen. I want him bad now. So I talked about Ron having discussions, and Ron, when he gets a little loose-lipped, he can just start talking, just having diarrhea in the mouth. This is the time of the year that he usually does that. So I want to start with what I think is a very interesting and provocative conversation. Chase Young and his 5th-year option. I remember this conversation coming up with people while he was still rehabbing his injury during the course of the regular season this past year. And the assumption from most was that, oh yeah, they're going to pick up the 5th-year option. Yeah, they're just going to pick it up. Face of the franchise, very marketable. Like, we haven't had a guy like him since Robert Griffin III. Let's keep it a buck. Robert Griffin III made it very easy for this organization to be marketed, right? If we were playing a big game, all they had to do was put number 10 face up on the screen, right? He was already in every commercial you could think of at the time. Same thing with Chase Young. It's rare in this league that the face of your franchise isn't your quarterback, unless you don't have one, which we don't. But even if we did have one, I'm not sure Chase Young still isn't the face of the franchise. Very charismatic, very polarizing, number 2 overall pick in the draft. However, if the quarterback here was any good, they'd probably still supersede him. When the Bills are playing, you don't see Von Miller's face. You see Josh Allen's face, right? I mean, the Rams are playing. Are you going to see Aaron Donald's mug, or are you going to see Matthew Stafford's? It just depends. If Stafford's out, you're going to see Aaron Donald. But if Matthew Stafford's healthy, you're going to see Matthew Stafford. That's usually how it works. But we don't have a quarterback, so that's not even a discussion to be had. It's Chase Young. If you know nothing else, if you don't know any other players here, you know Chase Young. If the NFL is having one representative from each team to take a photo for a commercial, who do you think they're going to call? Who do you think is going to represent Washington? Chase Young. So the assumption was, oh yeah, they're going to pick up the 5th-year option. This isn't a big deal. Now we're here, and it's a big deal. So there was a bit of confusion. I saw a tweet from someone that made it seem as if Ron was advocating for not picking up the 5th-year option and applying pressure to Chase Young the way that they did with Daron Payne. And I said, that can't be. First of all, Ron may have said some things, but I know he didn't say that because that's inaccurate. Then I thought about, this is the same man that didn't know we could be eliminated from the playoffs by losing to Cleveland, coupled with the Green Bay win. So I put nothing past him, Put nothing past him. So I read the article. And kind of sounds like Ron kind of fudged over a fact or two, but who's keeping track? I get the gist of what he was trying to say. In case you didn't read this article, I took the liberty of clipping out a few pieces of it for us to digest. So let's do that right now. So this is an article by Nikki Javala. And like I said, Nikki did a wonderful job with this article. A lot of good stuff in here. She had a one-on-one with Ron, and she talked about Sam Howell. She talked about Chase Young. She talked about Daron Payne. She talked, even got in a little bit of Heineke talk with this particular article. Talked about the overall, outlook for this team. We're going to get to all of that stuff tonight. So let's go through these excerpts that I took out of this article from Nikki Javala's article in the Post. So we start with this first excerpt. You get an opportunity to sit down and look at his tape with our scouts. His tape being Chase Young, right? And talk about the way he played. Talking about this year. Rivera said, what do we see in terms of development and growth? We're going to sit down with the doctors, with the trainers. Where is he? Question mark. Okay. Want to know where that knee is? And can we expect this guy to be back to 100% for the start of OTAs? And this is like, Chase doesn't have the rope that he had after being Defensive Rookie of the Year. He didn't even have the same length of rope that he had last year when he was rehabbing and he decided to rehab outside of the organization. He can't even do that this year. His ass has to be at OTAs, every single one of them. If he's not, what does that say? I mean, they will have to make, if I'm not mistaken, they don't have to make a decision until after the first wave of OTAs is hit. If I'm Chase, I'm coming just because of that. It'd be a pretty dick move, though, if he showed up for every one of the OTAs after the draft, because, I think there's a pre-draft OTAs and then there's the rookie ones. I could be wrong about that. And the first ones don't take place until the rookie minis right after the draft. If that's the case, because I think they have until May the 1st to make a decision on his 5th-year option. And if that's accurate, the draft would have already taken place and the rookie minis would have already taken place. So theoretically speaking, we wouldn't have had any OTAs where the veterans had to report. So they would have had to have made a decision by then. And if they'd already picked up your option, then you can do whatever the hell you want to do, right? You can still not show up. You could go shoot your Chipotle commercial. You can go shoot your East Bay commercial. You can go be on Family Feud and decide, I'll show up for one or two of these at the end. I already talked to coach. They know what's up. I don't think they're going for that shit this year. Not after you've posted a paltry 1.5 sacks over your last 2 seasons. Granted, last year was a washed season due to the injury he sustained in 2021. But he played in 10 games in 2021 and only had 1.5 sacks. So I don't think he's going to be afforded the same liberties that he had when he was coming off of a, very destructive rookie season in which he was crowned the Defensive Rookie of the Year. Anyway, if you look at what Daron did, why wouldn't you think of it that way? So now we're switching gears, okay, with this excerpt here. Rivera said, believe me, that would be my approach, especially looking at what Daron did and the situation he put himself in. It cost us with Daron. We're going to get back to that line right there. That line is so important. It cost us, and then this next sentence is even more important than the sentence I just read. But it cost us in a good way because the young man played and he did things the right way. We're going to put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that, okay? Rivera said the decision about Young's 5th year will not affect the decision the team must make about defensive tackle Daron Payne, which those are two independent situations. Who will be a free agent in March, but Payne's path could influence the team's thinking with Young. Washington picked up Payne's 5th year option 2 years ago, and he played his best this season in a contract year. Not exercising Young's 5th year, Rivera said, could be a motivator. So this is something that I didn't clip out because I didn't feel like I needed to clip it out. I could just tell you. One of the reasons things get very interesting with Chase Young is if you pick up the 5th year option, you're locking into a $17.5 million fully guaranteed 5th year. Whether he stinks or not, you're on the hook for $17.5 million 2 years from now, essentially. So you've got a decision to make. The Giants made a decision with Saquon Barkley not picking up his 5th year option. The Raiders made a decision with Josh Jacobs not picking up his 5th year option. You saw what Josh Jacobs did. Yeah, it can be a hell of a motivator. Josh Jacobs just turned in his best season of his career in a contract season after he essentially was shunned by the team that drafted him. So, yeah, it could be a motivator. Absolutely. Here's the thing. If you're Washington, first thing I want to elaborate on. These two situations are not identical, and Ron is kind of missing the point. You did pick up the 5th year option on Daron Payne, okay? We're not comparing apples to apples. If you don't pick up the 5th year option, then it's apples to oranges. You want an apples to apples comparison, pick up the 5th year option. Daron needed 5 years. If you would have cut Daron short a year, we wouldn't have gotten the performance, I don't think, at least. I could be wrong, and if you cut it short a year, he might have done this in year 4 instead of year 5. It's plausible, but I don't think that's what would have occurred. He needed to continue to develop, get better. And then we saw the fruits of his labor in year 5. Now you got to pay him. I've told you this already. I was on board with the way they handled Daron and not giving him the extension last year when they gave it to Terry. I wasn't sure if Daron was going to be here. I was at one point looking at Daron as the odd man out. If we're going to keep 3 out of the 4 guys, because I don't know if it's feasible, and we've had this conversation before, I don't know how feasible it is to keep all 4. You can do it if you want to. We've had that conversation as well. It's because we're not paying a quarterback. So you can do it if you want. But is it feasible to pay an inordinate amount of money to 4 guys across your defensive line? 4 first-round picks. Again, not impossible when you don't have a quarterback that you're paying big money to. But my thought process has always been, when we got these guys, somebody's not going to make it. Somebody's not going to be here. Someone's not going to re-up with the squad. That guy for me for a long time was Daron Payne. Initially, it started off as Jonathan Allen, and I was like, I don't know, man. Allen's cool, but Payne may have a higher upside. Then Allen was like, bro, you sure about that? Because I'm consistently nasty with mine. And I'm a team leader. And over the last 2 years of his rookie deal, John Allen showed me, bro, I'm not the one. Okay. Somebody might not be here, but I'm not that guy. Touche. Fair enough. So then I moved on to his partner in crime, Daron Payne, and I'm looking at him like, bro, these two ends, man, you can find you a defensive tackle. Can't just find guys that do what these guys can potentially do on these edges, though. What you got for me? Because I can find a dude that can get me 4.5 sacks and stop the run. If that's what you're going to do, I can't pay you for that. John got heads because John basically had 10 sacks the last 2 years. All right. We're just short of it. 8.5, 9, 9.5. He's been hovering around that 10 range for the last 2-3 years. So John is, let's say, hey, bro, I do this. What do you bring to the table? So Daron's like, I can show you better than I can tell you. Dominant against the run. 11.5 sacks, which surpassed everybody on the squad. We ain't had a guy get 11.5 or better since Ryan Kerrigan probably had like 12.5, 2016 or something like that, 2015, 2016. We don't do that in these parts, double-digit sacks. So that shit was refreshing. Like a cold beverage on a hot day. All right, bro. I see what you over there doing. Come with me. Excuse me. I got something for you. So we're going to take care of him. Now I'm looking at the two ends. Like, all right. We got two contestants, one chair. Which one of y'all, when the music stops, is going to sit down? I'm looking at Montez, and I'm looking at Chase. And Tez has been relatively healthy. Tez has been relatively healthy. That's the difference between the two. Tez has been a little bit more consistent. He's also been in the league longer. But everybody, this is the common thread. Everybody's gotten the opportunity on the 5th year. Everybody. Chase is a little bit different because Jonathan Allen, at the time of picking up his 5th year option, hadn't made a Pro Bowl. So you didn't have to pay him, big money, right? Pay him good money, but you didn't have to pay him big money. Montez Sweat, at the time of picking up his 5th year option, hasn't made a Pro Bowl. Daron Payne, when they picked up his 5th year option, hadn't made the Pro Bowl. So you weren't paying the rate of a guy that has already made a Pro Bowl. Chase Young has. So that number's a little bit higher. And oh, by the way, Daron Payne, 17th pick overall, something like that. 13, I think he was 13th. Jonathan Allen, 17. Montez Sweat, 24, 25, something like that. Numbers aren't as high as the 2nd overall pick. It's a little different, right? So I get all of that. But at the end of the day, everybody got 5. Everybody had the luxury of that 5th year. John didn't need it. He was able to prove his worth in 4. And before we got to the 5th year, he had already got extended. Daron needed the 5th year to prove that he was that guy, and he did. And now he's going to get rewarded for it. And now Tez is going to get his 5th year to prove that once and for all, he belongs here. Shouldn't Chase get the same respect? Shouldn't he get the same opportunity to prove, especially coming off of an injury? Now, if the doctors say, hey, We're still not back to where we were pre-injury. And I can't tell you when that's going to occur. Okay, that factors into the decision-making, which is what Ron said. We're going to ask the doctors and the trainers, where is he? If they come back and they say, hey, Ron, that knee is fine. It's surgically repaired, and it's as strong, if not stronger than it was before the injury. He's fine. If that's what they come back and tell him, then, okay, let's do it. Let's give him the 5th year. Let's see what he's about. From a talent standpoint, Chase is supposed to be superior to that of Montez Sweat. From a physical, God-given ability, Montez Sweat is supposed to be the better of the two. But from a talent standpoint, there's a reason Chase Young went number 2 overall, was named the Predator, and was one of the most feared and dominant players in college football. That wasn't Montez Sweat. That was Chase Young. There was a reason that we weren't even thinking. Now, obviously, we had Dwayne at the time, but F Dwayne, God rest his soul. F Dwayne, in that moment, if we would have had a chance to get Joe Burrow, we would have taken Joe Burrow and we wouldn't have blinked. The reason that we were so gung-ho at the time of, hey, just get Chase Young, we good, is because we were expecting a transcendent talent to show up here and dominate this division in the league, for that matter. And we got a glimpse of it in his rookie season. He didn't just forget how to play football, guys. Give him 5 years, like you gave everybody else. Because this next year, he still might not be himself. And in not being himself, it might be 7 sacks, and which is a solid season. But it's still not what we're looking for. Now, if it's 7 like it was in his rookie season, I think it was, 7.5 in his rookie season, but it came with like 4 or 5 forced fumbles. You know, a scoop and score for a touchdown. Like if it's impactful like that, then we're heading in the right direction. We're trending back where we were before the injury. Well, really before the start of the 2021 season. But I say, yeah, $17.5 million. It's a lot of money. But for an elite edge rusher, that ain't shit. That's a drop in the hat. It's a drop in the bucket, bro. Elite edges are getting paid north of 20 now, okay? Let's see what this dude can do. Give him 5 years. I don't really think this should be something that we're discussing. And I feel like Ron missed the boat because he's talking about this situation as if they picked up the 5th-year option and they're deciding on whether to re-sign him early or to let his contract play out like they did with Daron. These situations are not the same. You picked up the 5th-year option on Daron Payne. He balled in his 5th year. We're going into year number 4 of Chase Young, okay? Year 3 was a waste because of an injury that was sustained in year 2. I feel like you'd be remiss if you don't give him the 5th year. I think you'd be remiss. Also, this is something to consider because all anybody wants to think about and consider is, well, what if he stinks in 2023? And he gets you a whole 2.5 sacks and you're really feeling bad about the selection. And now you're looking at that $17.5 million and you're saying, what the F did we just do? That's all anybody wants to think about. What if next year he shows up and he shows out and he returns to Predator form and he explodes for 16.5 sacks next year and you didn't pick up the 5th-year option? Now he's a free agent. Did you ever consider that happening? Like, Ron is talking about maybe it'll light a fire on them. Maybe it will. Are you willing to pay the cost of what that will be without the crutch of a fifth-year option? Because if he balls and becomes a free agent, now you're in trouble. Whereas if he balls next year, you picked up the fifth-year option, you got some breathing room. You got some space to negotiate, to talk. You got time on your side. He balls next year, you don't pick up the fifth-year option, there is no time. And there's a little bit of disrespect. What you see as motivation, I see as disrespect. Now, some players take it one way, like Josh Jacobs is like, bro, I want to be back in Vegas. It was different. You know why it was different? Josh McDaniels and that GM didn't really know Josh Jacobs. They had no allegiance to him. Mike Mayock selected him. John Gruden selected him. Those guys aren't there. New regime comes in and they're looking at you sideways and they're saying, you are funny looking, not giving you a fifth-year option. And he's like, cool, I get it. I'll prove to you that I belong here. He did. Now they got to pay him or let somebody else do it. These the same cats that drafted you. Ron was here when you got drafted. Part of the reason Ron took the job is because he knew he was going to pick you number 2 overall. That was part of the reason. He looked at the defensive line, said, damn, they got Montez Sweat, they got Chase Young, they got John Allen, and I'm about to add Chase Young to this bitch. That's part of the reason he took the job. And the guy that drafted you is going to look you in your eyes and say, bro, I don't think you're worthy of the fifth-year option. That could be a little disrespectful to the point where he's like, you know what? Not only am I going to go out and prove to you that you made a mistake, I don't even want to come back. You can franchise me, but I'm going to do you just like Brandon Sheriff. I'm going to do you just like Kirk Cousins, milk your ass dry, and then I'm going to get the hell out of here and get my bread somewhere else. Look, I don't know what's going to occur. I don't have a crystal ball. He could have 1.5 sacks again next year. He could have 16.5 sacks, or he could split the difference and be somewhere in the 7.5 sack range. Really, to me, it doesn't matter. He should be afforded a fifth year, especially coming off of the injury he sustained in his second season that essentially cost him all of his third season in the league. We have no idea what we're going to get in year 4. And for some of you, that's the reason not to give him the fifth-year option, because you don't want to be on the hook for the $17.5 million. The man said he's going to talk to the doctors and trainers. As far as I'm concerned, if they tell me the knee is in great shape, there's nothing to be concerned about, this man can cut it loose, that's all I need to hear if I'm Ron Rivera. Give me the fifth-year option. I hope he makes the right decision because, again, these two situations are not the same. You picked up the fifth-year option on Daron Payne. And I sincerely, I liken it to Sam Howell. A lot of people just assume that if Sam Howell had been inserted into the lineup when Carson Wentz went down after the Bears game, and let's say, excuse me, that Washington had lost that Bears game and fell to 1-5 on the season. For all intents and purposes, the season would have been over. You say that, but you look at what the Bears did. They were 1-6, and they almost made the playoffs. But we weren't the Bears. The Lions, excuse me. You look at what the Lions did. They were 1-6, and they almost made the playoffs. But they were scoring points. They scored 33 on Philly, scored 36 on us. They were scoring points. They scored, 42 against Seattle in a loss. They were scoring points. We weren't. Now, that was a big difference. Anyway, a lot of people feel like we should have put Sam Howell in earlier. See what the kid did? Interesting. Because I am a proponent of Had you put him in earlier, you would not have gotten the same results you got in that Week 18 game against Dallas. Much more mature quarterback, had sat for an entire year, gained experience through watching and reps and practice, and he had become a more confident quarterback in this league because of a full year of learning. You cut that shit in half? Hell, that wouldn't even been half. You cut that 2/3 of that off and say, hey, go get him, Sam, in Week 7? I don't think you're getting the Week 18 Sam Howell that we got. Essentially what I'm saying is Daron Payne may have done what he did this year, last year, if you didn't pick up the 5th-year option. It's very possible. But I think that extra year of seasoning, you could see he was getting better. I don't know if you could have predicted 11.5 sacks because it's not like he had 8.5 last year and he was trending in this direction. But you can see he was getting better. He was becoming more confident. I don't think he gets 11.5 sacks last year. Just keeping it a buck with you. I don't think he dominates the way that he did this year, last year, if you don't pick up the 5th-year option. Daron Payne is probably not a Washington Commander right now had you not picked up the 5th-year option. You would have missed out on this year. He would have been doing the shit he's doing now. He would have been doing that for the Cincinnati Bengals instead of the Washington Commanders. He would have, the very first year he left here, he would have did that Preston Smith shit. Remember? First year Preston Smith leaves. 13.5 sacks for the Green Bay Packers. You're like, what the f is that? This whole time we've been sitting here with your 7.5 sack ass, and then you leave and go to Green Bay, and the first year you explode for 13.5? What the F, bro? Carlos Rogers all over again. Bro, you couldn't catch claps in a whorehouse when you was here the first time. You go to San Francisco and you get LASIK surgery and all of a sudden you got 6 picks? You didn't have 6 picks your entire career in Washington. That shit would have happened again with Daron Payne had we not picked up the 5th-year option. I'm not willing to allow that to happen with Chase Young. It could backfire. He could just not be good, right? And he could be garbage in year 4. He already picked up the option. He comes back, and he's not good in year 5 either. Okay, so what? After the 5th year, $17.5 million off the books. That's the way I look at it. Like, you have to pick up the 5th-year option. Have to. I think the risk of not picking it up is greater than that of not picking it up. Or picking it up, excuse me. Excuse me. The risk of not picking it up is greater than that of picking it up. To me, I'd much rather, and I can sleep at night, sleep like a baby, knowing, hey, we drafted this kid 2nd overall. We gave him an opportunity. It's not like he was Cleveland Farrell. You spend a top 5 pick on a dude, and he sucks ass. It's not like he's been Cleveland Farrell. There is the rookie season. That does exist. If we didn't have that, okay, fine. I get it. I get it. But we got that. So we know it's in there somewhere. I'm willing to stick around and find out if we can pull it out of him. So I think Ron, for me, Ron is making a mistake of comparing Daron Payne and Chase Young situations. I don't think they're one and the same. You picked up the 5th-year option on Daron Payne, and you were rewarded because of it. And now Daron's going to be rewarded because of it. Because had you not picked up the 5th-year option and you got the same season in year 4 that you got out of him, 4.5 sacks, whatever he got, solid defender, but nothing major. Daron would have hit free agency. You would have let him walk. He would have got some good money. It wouldn't have been anything earth-shattering, right? Not the money he's about to get. So it benefited both of you. Benefited us because he played so well last year, and it benefited him because now he's going to cash in at a much higher rate than he would have if he would have left in free agency after not having the 5th-year option picked up. I just think Ron would be making a grave mistake. And to be honest, if I'm Ron Rivera, and I know he's not thinking like this, he shouldn't be. So I probably shouldn't even say this because it's reckless, because I know better. When you know better, you do better. I'm going to say it anyway. If you're Ron, bro, you got nothing to lose. Ron ought to be coaching as if he's going to be here for the next 10 years. Like, Ron shouldn't be coaching like, hey, like, bro, take the stuff out of your box, get comfortable. This is your office, all right? The people that are scared that at any moment they could be fired, they never take their shit out of the box. Why? Because when it's time to go, they don't want to have to pull all this shit off the wall and get all the trinkets off the desk and all the stuff that made it personable, all the things that make it your office. They don't want to do that shit. Just give me my computer, my little desk, my chair, and anything I need is in the box. And if I got to go in there, I can grab it out of the box. No. You're going to be here for a while. This is your office. All right. You're not going anywhere. Go ahead, put the pictures up of your family, put your degree behind you. You know, put your picture of your grandma right there. You know, put your favorite figurine right here. Put all your shit up here on the desk, man. Decorate the room. You're not going nowhere. This is your office. That's how Ron should be treating it. In my mind, as a fan, I'm like, Ron, keep your shit in the box, bro. Keep your shit in the box. You might not be here much longer, right? But in saying that, what do I got to lose? If I pick up the 5th-year option and it works out, great. I'm still here, and he's still here, and now we got a chance to work out a deal. If I pick up the 5th-year option and it doesn't work, I just pick up my box, I leave, and the next guy has to deal with the shit. What difference does it make to me? Again, Ron shouldn't be treating it like that. Ron should be taking all of his shit out of the box and decorating the office, because this is where I'm going to be. Get settled in. I just don't think there's a benefit, a great benefit. Like, if you're worried about $17.5 million when you don't have a quarterback that you're paying big money to, if you're going to re-sign Montez Sweat, it's going to cost you way more than $17.5 million per year. Trust me. Trust me. Like, just do it. Pick up the 5th-year option. You gave Daron 5 years and it benefited you. Don't make a mistake that you'll regret trying to motivate him. Coming off of major knee surgery, I may add. Like, don't do that to yourself. I don't think that would be wise. I'd pick up the 5th-year option. I'd love to hear what you guys think about that. Anyway, so that was the first thing I really wanted to talk about. Now, I want to talk about Daron Payne real quick. Remember I told you we were going to put a pin in that comment? Let's go back to that comment real quick. Believe me, that would be my approach, especially looking at what Daron did and the situation he put himself in. It cost us with Daron, but it cost us in a good way because the young man played and he did things the right way. And if you read the article that goes on to talk, it started by talking about Daron could have sat out. You know, he could have had a sit-in. That's what they call them now, right? Where you come to practice because you can't hold out anymore because you'd be fine. So what players were doing was they were coming to practice, but they weren't participating when they wanted a new deal. DK Metcalf did that. Other guys did that where they showed up because nobody wants to get fined. If I'm still on my rookie deal, I haven't made any real money yet. So I can't be giving it away. So I'm going to show up, but I'm not practicing. Not until you pay me. He said Daron could have did that. He could have had to sit in. But he didn't do that. He didn't do it. He went out and he balled, and he did it the right way, and now he's going to be rewarded. What does that statement say to you? Does that sound like a man that's mulling over a decision to have a guy back? Or does that sound like, hey, bro, we've already penciled in whatever the cost is going to be. We're bringing that man back. I don't know about you. That statement right there, it cost us. It didn't cost you anything. You haven't paid Daron Payne yet, unless you already in your mind has been made up that you're going to pay him. But it cost us in a good way. They're paying Daron Payne, man. Okay? He's going to be here. You'd be a damn fool to think that he wasn't going to be here. They're paying Daron Payne. Okay? That's what I gathered from this, is that they're going to pay Daron Payne. Now, how much, how many years, all of that stuff, couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you. But I can tell you this much. Daron Payne, he's not going anywhere. At least that's what I gathered from this. And you know what else I'm having a real feeling about? I don't think Daron Payne's one of those dudes that you have to worry about, like, being super greedy or, you know, not wanting to be here. I think he's really comfortable. Like Brandon Sheriff, he didn't want to be here. And there was no amount of money that we could throw at him. Remember, we tried to make him the highest paid guard in the NFL. And he turned us down. And he didn't get this ridiculous deal from Jacksonville. He got a good deal from Jacksonville. But it wasn't like to the point where you're like, oh, okay, I see why he turned us down. Look at what he got from Jacksonville. He got solid money from Jacksonville. He just didn't want to be here. He didn't want to be here. I don't get – Kirk didn't want to be here. Like, there's this notion, this stigma that's attached to the franchise tag all of a sudden, that if a guy gets to free agency and you slap the tag on him, he's as good as gone. Now he's just milking you dry. Now he's going to bleed you. A deal done. If I don't want to be there and you're holding me hostage, then yes, I am going to bleed you dry till you let me go, whether it's after 1 or 2 franchise tags. You're not going to do it a third time. And then I'm going to go somewhere else and get paid, like Sheriff and like Kirk did. I think Daron actually wants to be in Washington. That's the feeling I get. Seeing his posts on socials, listening to him talk, knowing that his best friend is on the team, knowing that there are a lot of Bama guys on the team, knowing that this is the team that, and I've told you guys this before, most players are loyal to a fault sometimes, but loyal to the team that drafted them. Unless things have gone off the rails, like I think the last straw that broke the camel's back for Brandon Sheriff. And to me, it makes a ton of sense when I look back on the situation. I didn't even think about this at the time, but it made a ton of sense. When they got rid of Morgan Moses, who is Brandon Sheriff's best friend, or was on the team at least, that was it for him. If Morgan Moses was still here, I think Brandon Sheriff is still here. The minute they got rid of Morgan Moses, he was like, bro, I'm out. They got no reason to stay here now. So I don't see that in Daron Payne. I think he wants to be here. So I think a deal's going to get done. I've been adamant that a deal's going to get done between the two sides. And I think it's going to be the same thing like it's been, you know, July, just like it was with Terry, just like it was with John. But it'll get done before training camp. That's my thought, my sentiments right now. That could change, but I think that's what's ultimately going to happen. But reading that little excerpt, that little piece there, where Ron is essentially telling you He made himself a bunch of money, and now we're going to pay it to him. That's what that statement says, if we're translating. Daron did it the right way. You know how big Ron is about doing it the right way? We've had these conversations before. First thing he said is, you do it your way, I can't save you. You do it my way and it doesn't work, I'll fall on the sword for you. Ron's all about doing it the right way. That's why John Allen and Terry McLaurin got paid, because they do it the right way. Daron did it the right way. He's getting paid. Just so you know. So now I want to transition to the next topic. Quarterback. QB1. So I know you guys have seen some of the interviews. I saw two of them in particular, where Ron is sitting down, chopping it up with, a couple of different, one was on Radio Row, the other was on NFL Network. And the message was pretty consistent, as it is here, that he didn't say anything crazy. A lot of people ran with it and said, oh, Sam Howell's QB1. It's not what Ron said. Ron said he's going to start out as QB1, which means he's probably going to be QB1. But everything that Ron said and everything that I'm going to read to you here in a second sounds like a man scorned. I'll explain here in a second. Let's read this excerpt. This excerpt here is from Ben Standing's article in The Athletic regarding the quarterback position and the offseason in general, right? So let's have at this. I'm not saying he's the starter. I'm saying he will start as the guy with the first chance, but he will have some competition. This is Ron speaking. We like free agent, in parentheses, Taylor. So we like Taylor. Talking about Taylor Heineke, right? We'd like to see if we can do something to get him back. That's the first time we've heard that. We'll come back to that. Put a pin in that. We'll come back to that. We got to go out and look and see if there's another veteran guy we want to bring in as competition. I'm not anointing anybody. I'm just telling Sam this is his opportunity, but he will be challenged. I'll read you this next piece of it, and then we're going to talk. I think Sam is on the precipice of taking another step right now. But at the same time, I cannot anoint him because I've got to have somebody out there competing and pushing him. Who knows? Maybe that person comes in and beats him. Closed quote. So, what does this sound like to you? What do you hear here? What does this sound like to you? This sounds like Ron playing back the Dwayne Haskins situation in his head. Does it not? Does this not sound like Ron saying, I effed that situation up? And he told us the next offseason when he brought in Ryan Fitzpatrick for a competition that didn't exist, right? He doesn't want to do that again. He essentially gave Dwayne the job, and it was a disaster. Ryan Fitzpatrick pretty much given the job. It was a competition. It was never a competition. They went out and got Ryan Fitzpatrick, and they planned on giving him an opportunity to be the guy, and then he got hurt. Interesting in here that he says they'd like to have Taylor back. but then still says we're going to go out there and look and see if there's any veterans. If you want Taylor back, then there shouldn't be a need for another veteran. But understand that if you bring Taylor back, there is no competition. Why? Because we know what Taylor is. Now, if Taylor's spanking him in camp, okay, maybe he doesn't deserve to be the starter then. Because from what we've heard, Taylor is pretty basic in practice because his best attributes aren't on display in a practice setting where he gets to be off script, buy time in the pocket, get out of the pocket, escape, extend. You don't get to see those things in practice. So Heineke's basic in practice. You can't beat him in a competition. What does that say about you? Not to mention, on top of that, we've already pigeonholed Taylor Heinicke into a box, into a role as a backup. I don't know if you heard what Taylor Heinicke has said, but on the Pat McAfee show, he said, my dream has always been to play in Green Bay. So I'd love to do that. Packers aren't interested in Taylor Heinicke, as far as I'm concerned now. They trade Aaron Rodgers, right? Jordan Love's the man. They don't have another backup quarterback in Green Bay. Maybe Heinicke does find his way to Green Bay. It's possible. I don't think it's likely, but it's possible. But he then said, I want to start. I want to play. That's not happening anywhere else. I'm just going to tell you right now. Nobody's bringing in Taylor Heinicke to start. He said, but if that can't happen, backup quarterback is one of the best jobs in the world. Not wrong. There aren't many jobs that pay you the amount of money that backup quarterbacks get paid to essentially stay ready but do nothing. It's not a bad gig. So Heinicke was really talking up Sam Howell, man. Like Heinicke sounds like his biggest fan. I love it. I love that shit. I love the fact that, first of all, I love that Heinicke was like, first of all, Heinicke didn't do that for Sam Howell. Like, let's get one thing straight. We've already had this discussion, but I just need to reiterate this because, Heinicke was putting on the sauce thick, as he should. But make no mistake about it. And he kind of insinuated this. He said it without saying it. He kind of said it, but then he caught himself in the moment saying it, and then he kind of went in a different direction. He's a smart dude. But he said, yeah, because of the situation, the previous 2 weeks, we were already out of it. Like, that's his way of saying, bro, don't try to come back now and give me an opportunity to start. When you bench me for the biggest game of the season against Cleveland, now you want to try to come back? You bench me against the 49ers, right? And then you bench me for good against the Browns. Now we're out of it and you want me to come back in and play? What is the psychological? I'm not playing in week 18. F that. Give it to Sam. That's more along the lines. Now, he didn't say it in a disrespectful tone or manner, but that's essentially how he was thinking in his mind. Like, oh, hell no, I'm not playing. And he went in there and he said, hey, Sam's been working his ass off. Won't you give a young fella a look? That was Taylor's way of saying, F y'all. I'm not going out there and playing in a meaningless week 18 game. For what? Get that shit to Sam. But he was talking him up on the Pat McAfee show. Pat McAfee asked him, is Sam Howell a dog? He said, he's a dog. Sam's a dog. And then he went on to talk about how, bro, if he would have come out after his junior season, he'd been a first or second round pick. And I don't get the narrative of Sam had a terrible, like I read in another excerpt from Ben Standing's article where he says Sam had a shitty senior season. And he may have been paraphrasing or quoting scouts and other people who felt that way about Sam's senior season. Or he could have been just talking about that's the way he viewed it. I didn't see Sam Howell having a shitty senior season. You know what I saw? Him having a lesser season than he had the previous two at Chapel. And we could list all the reasons, and Ron went on to list all the reasons. You lose 2,000-yard receivers, you lose 2,000-yard running backs, you lose 2/3 of your offensive line. Yeah, it's going to affect you. We're aware of all of those things. I don't think he was as bad as people make. Look, he wasn't as good. Man went into the season as a Heisman hopeful. He was on the Heisman watch list to start the season off. And then they go to Blacksburg and lose the very first game of the season, if I'm not mistaken, that year. If my memory serves me correct. And it kind of just went downhill from there. But he did some really good things in that year as well. Like, I think it's a disservice to what he did in that last year to look at it that way. But anyway, I digress. Taylor's like, I honestly don't know how he lasted to the 5th round. Man had one season where, he wasn't as good as the previous year, and all of a sudden now he's a 5th round pick. Okay. Dude can play ball. So I love that from Heinicke. And I would love Heinicke to be back. And that's the energy I expected from Taylor. Like, Taylor's got the demeanor of a dude that's like, bro, I was on my couch. I thought my career was over. I was asking Scott Turner for a coaching gig. Like, anything that I get, I'm grateful for it. So whether I'm starting, I'm backing up, I'm just happy to be in the league getting a check, bro. He's about to get to the bag, right? He's about to get to the biggest bag he's seen in his life. It's Taylor Heinicke. It won't be the shit that some of y'all think. Some of y'all had some crazy number. Taylor Heinicke's going to be somewhere in the $7 to $10 million a year range. I think closer to 7 than he is 10. If he gets 9, that'd be really good money for him. But it's a 3-year, 21, 3-year, $24 million deal for Taylor Heinicke. 3 years, $27 million. If he's really lucky, it's 3 years, $30 million. It ain't gonna be too much more than that. Okay, for you, those of you out there thinking he's getting 16, 17 million, what the hell are you talking about? What are you smoking on? Okay, he's not getting that kind of money. So, I'd love to have him back here. Sounds like Ron would too. Told you to put a pin in it. Take that pen out. He said we'd like to have Taylor back. That's the first time we've heard that. See if we can do something to get him back. Because we all felt like the key was Scott Turner. Now that Scott's no longer here, maybe Ron's not very, smitten with Taylor, but Ron saw how Taylor was able to galvanize this team in the locker room. That doesn't go unnoticed. And he also realized that while he's not a starter, if you need a dude, if you need a guy to give you a spark, unlike Carson Wentz, who was sparkless, you need a spark. You can get it from Taylor Heinicke. There's something there. More than just a flicker and a flame. What Ron is essentially saying is, I can't do what I did with Dwayne. I can't do what I did with Ryan Fitzpatrick. We knew last year there was no competition. He made it abundantly clear. You trade what you did to get Carson, you're paying him $28 million. There's nothing to talk about. And you're going to kind of hear a little bit of that. And again, Ron is dealing with some PTSD. Okay. You're seeing it here. You're hearing his words. This is a man that's been effective in the past. You're hearing it. Show you something else. Now we're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about looking for quarterbacks, not Sam Howell, QB1. With regards, this is the question that was posed to him by Ben Standing. With regards to that competition, okay, quarterback competition, what are you looking for in this other quarterback? How much is the team willing to invest? That's the key question. All right. Because I can give you some bullshit about what we're looking for in another quarterback. No. I don't need that. Because you could be describing Andy Dalton and Jimmy Garoppolo all at the same time. I don't need that. The key question is, what are you willing to invest? Because that'll tell me where your head's at. You may not be willing to give up draft capital. But if Derek Carr comes free or if Jimmy Garoppolo's floating around, are you going to be willing to give up what it takes to bring him on board from a monetary standpoint? Listen to what Ron had to say. He said, well, it's hard for me to say that. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and spend all this capital. Because if you spend this capital, that guy has to be your starter. Let's stop right there. What does that sound like PTSD from? You guessed it. That's Carson Wentz PTSD right there. Not going to do that again. Not going to give up 2 draft picks, eat $28 million. Not doing that again because that guy has to start. There is no competition. I can't tell you Sam Howell is going to be QB1 to start with a chance to lock it up, but he's going to have to compete for it. If I bring in a guy that supersedes him on the totem pole, that has to start. There's no competition at that point. Continuing, he says, I want to ensure that whatever we do it at the right price. You don't want to spend draft and player capital and money and then sit there and say, this hypothetical quarterback is competing. Let's stop again. What does that sound like PTSD from? Carson Wentz. Okay. He's talking about Carson Wentz all throughout this answer. Can't trade a 3rd round and another 3rd round pick that could turn into a 2nd round pick. Can't eat $28 million that forces you to release the likes of Matt Ioannidis, Eric Flowers, and Landon Collins, and then come back and tell me that that guy's competing for a job. Because he's not. He's your starter. We have to be careful. Let's continue. That's where we have to be smart and careful. You have to have the right sense and feeling. What he's essentially telling you is, we ain't going out here and getting no big-time quarterback. We're not trading for anybody. We're not signing a guy to a lucrative deal because if we do that, then Sam's not competing. He's the backup quarterback. They're going to go out and they're going to get a Jacoby Brissett type. They're going to go out and they're going to get a Tyrod Taylor type or Taylor Heineke type to compete but not win because Sam is the guy that they're going to roll with. But unlike the situation with Dwayne, where we saw the PTSD here, he wants Sam to earn it. Dwayne didn't have to earn it. They essentially gave it to him. They want Sam to earn it, which Sam will have no problem doing. But they want him to earn it. Everything that you've heard, everything that we've talked about to this point tonight, it speaks to the offseason going the way that we desire it to go. Meaning, they're not going out and trading for Derek Carr. They're not signing Jimmy Garoppolo. You're not going to go after Aaron Rodgers. Although some of you probably would like them to do that. They're going to give Sam Howell an opportunity. They're going to bring in a mid to low tier backup quarterback to compete. And they're going to give Sam every opportunity to lock this bitch up. and make it his team. Lock it up. Lock it up. Lock that shit up, Sam. Go be that guy. I don't know about you, but feeling pretty good about everything so far. Other than the Chase Young shit. I don't like that at all. Hope he makes the right decision. I think he's allowing the Daron Payne situation to impact him, and it's not the same. It'd be one thing if it was exactly the same. Okay, I get it. I don't think he's thinking about it the right way, but we'll see what happens. Lastly, this is Ron, I think, giving us an overview of where he thinks we are as a football team. I thought this was interesting. This is why I clipped this one as well. Another excerpt from Ben Standing's article in the Athletic. This is in regard to the quarterback position, but I think it also speaks to where Ron feels like we are. And sometimes I don't think we actually know where we don't really know where we think the coaches think we are. Sometimes I think there's this delusional aspect to the way we as fans view the team and the way the team views the team. For years, you had Bruce Allen talking about we were close. And our response was, close to what? The worst team in football? What are you talking about? Close. So they're thinking in the building that they were close. They were never close to anything meaningful. For some of us, going into the season, 11 wins was attainable. And then the 1-4 start, and you're thinking, I was a dumbass. How could I ever be so foolish to think this team could ever do anything other than win 7 or 8 games? Silly me. Then you go win 6 out of 7, and all of a sudden you're 7-5, and then you're up 10 on the road at New York, and you're thinking to yourself, hey, let's go win 11 goddamn games this season, man. Shit, let's go win 11. Why not? And then you find out why not. And in that moment, I start to think, were we closer to 11 or were we closer to 5? We were at 8. 11 was the magic number before the season. But could we have won 5? And the answer is absolutely. Which were we closer to? I'm not sure what Ron thinks. Does Ron think we were closer to 11 or to 5? Let's read this quote from Ron Rivera. Ron says, quote, we're formidable, and we didn't have a completely healthy quarterback all year. Rivera said, let's stop right there. I don't like that bullshit ass excuse. Okay. So you're trying to tell me Carson Wentz wasn't healthy for the first 6 weeks of the season? We knew of a shoulder injury that he sustained. I want to say it was after the Titans game, or during the Titans game, rather. Because remember, he ended up on the injury report on that quick turnaround for Thursday Night Football. Then he broke his hand that night. Tell me Carson wasn't healthy in weeks 1, 2, 3, 4. Then he got banged up a little bit in week 5. Come on, man. You had a healthy quarterback. He just sucked ass after the offensive line went to hell in a handbasket. Now, did you have some issues with health at quarterback? Absolutely. Taylor was banged up. We saw him get banged up. We know he gets banged up. Carson obviously missed some time. Yeah, we had injuries at the quarterback position. There's no doubt on that. There's no debating that. But don't say you didn't have a completely healthy quarterback all year, because you did to start the season off. Anyway, we've got a stout running game. We've got playmakers in position. And we had a young man who showed us that he can spread the ball out and get it out quickly. What's the risk of spending money on somebody and then all of a sudden it not working out again? Question mark. Now, are we going to give up on trying to find the right veteran? Question mark. Absolutely not. If we find the right veteran to come in and add that competition to that group of guys in that room, I think we're going to see growth. Close quote. So, Ron, we're formidable. Kind of like 8-1-ish, don't you think? Formidable. But he goes on to say we got a stout run game, we've got playmakers in position. Those are all things that we know. So he didn't say anything here that super revealing. I do think what's interesting is he keeps talking about finding a veteran that can come in and compete. You can't bring in a Jimmy Garoppolo because you're going to be paying him money that suggests that he's the starter. You can't bring in Derek Carr, even if he's released, because you're going to be paying him money that suggests that he's the starter. Derek Carr isn't agreeing to come to Washington if he doesn't already assume he's the starter. He's not working. He's not competing to be a starter. Jimmy Garoppolo isn't going to go anywhere where he's competing to be the starter. Jimmy Garoppolo's going to say, look at my resume. I played in a Super Bowl. I went to an NFC championship game. Are you kidding me? I'm not competing with Sam Howell. Either I'm the starter or not. If we find the right veteran to come in and add to the competition of that group of guys in the room, then I think we're going to see growth. Essentially, if you ask me, he's talking about a mid to low tier veteran quarterback. He's not talking about a veteran with some chops that can come in here and potentially, you know, lead this team to bigger and better things. He's not talking about Aaron Rodgers. He's not talking about Derek Carr. He's not talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. He's talking about Teddy Bridgewater. He's talking about Jacoby Brissett. He's talking about Andy Dalton. He's talking about Tyrod Taylor. He's talking about Taylor Heineke. Anyway, I thought that was interesting as well. So, let's get to your comments. See what you guys have to say. And we'll go from there. I've said enough. So, let's see if I missed anything, because my computer just in front of me, my screen in front of me just had a conniption. So I might have missed some comments. So I have to go back and read these. Now, you won't see them on the screen, unfortunately. And I apologize for that. But you will have the comment read on the air. So we start the night off with Rosario Satara Poleski. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, any chance you bringing back the draft wrap-up series just for our NFC East teams? Family business draft wrap-up series. Thanks for the commentary. I don't know. I've long said this. The draft wrap-up series is so meticulous, and it requires such extensive work. And if I'm not yielding the dividends from it that work demands, then I don't see the benefit. When I first started the draft wrap-up series, it was the biggest and highest rated program on my channel. And as time passed and more content creators cropped up for other teams and people started doing all this draft content, the numbers waned to the point now where I'm like, is this even worth it? We're into July and I'm still working on draft wrap-up series content. And for what? To get 741 views? I don't know. I'm definitely suffering from PTSD, and I've been scorned. So I don't know if I want to go down that road again. We'll see. 4 teams, to your point, is just a division, is much easier than 32. So it's something to consider. Keep your friends close and your enemies even closer. I get that concept. We'll see. No guarantees. Metaphor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Metaphor writes, assumption is about $5 million for Dan Quinn. So I don't know that number. I don't know what he's being paid. Let's go with your assumption. That's $5 million. Bieniemy asking for 2.5 is pretty substantial then. That's half of what the highest paid coordinator in the league is getting. So if that's not a number you're comfortable with, then you may not be able to get the deal done. But if the highest paid coordinator is making 5, I would say most coordinators are probably making less than $2.5 million. That's what I would say. Now, some of the better guys with options might be making 3 or 3.5, but sounds like most guys are probably making in the $2 to $1.5 to $1 million range, whatever the case may be. We'll see what happens. Thank you for that metaphor. Barrett Downing, BD. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My God, BD writes, first of all, writes, looking forward to an epic offseason and the new merch. I need it. I'm working on it, and my goal is to have it out before the end of the month. So stay tuned for that, and keep your eyes open, ears to the streets, and see what we can get done. But I'll be promoting that soon, here shortly. So I appreciate you as always. Take Command for Life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Take Command for Life writes, guess who's Bizak? Back again. I'm not gonna jump on that one. That seems real luckish to me. Even though you put some little musical tunes there by it. Seems a little iffy to me. Anyway, I digress. Tony P56, you might have just been talking about yourself. It's been a while. It feels like it's been a while since we've chopped it up. So you might have just been talking about yourself, but I can never be too sure about these things. If you haven't been here, your man Luck has been on a tear. Not against me. I'm all over him, but not everybody is as perceptive as I am, and has the foresight to see what the hell's going on. I heard your jokes. Tony P56, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Damn. My guy Tony P56 writes, I don't think that hat is still there, bro. I don't either. He says, it's all good. I understand. I'm busy too. No, it's not all good. I feel bad about that. I'm gonna get a new PO box, and I'm gonna keep it this time because it never ceases to amaze me how this happens. You got something this entire time, nobody ever uses it. You feel like you're wasting money, so you get rid of it. The minute you get rid of it, now everybody wants to send you stuff. And I'm not talking about you because you had already sent me something before. But it's like 3 people hit me up like, yo, where can I send this? And I'm like, damn, just got rid of the P.O. box. I just need to go back and get it, So I apologize, man. EB comes here over Baltimore and will pay Chase Young with or without 5th-year option. I think EB. So here's something that I didn't bring up that I should have. And I'm pretty sure you guys are already aware of this. A lot of times I'm not breaking news to you. You guys are breaking news to me. But Ron said that he heard through the grapevine that Eric Bieniemy wants to go somewhere where there's a defensive head coach in place. And you ask yourself, why is he being that specific? Man, that statement speaks volumes if true. Ron's now going off of what he's heard. He hasn't directly heard that from Eric Bieniemy, but people that he trusts who are close enough to the situation that Ron feels comfortable regurgitating that information to others said that he'd prefer to be somewhere where there's a defensive head coach in place. Why, you ask? Great question. There are a lot of answers to this question. First things first. Eric Bieniemy is dealing with scars, okay? When you're dealing with the kind of traumatic experience he's had, you don't want anybody in your way, and you don't want anybody trying to take any of the credit. Okay, so the biggest issue with him in Kansas City, give me 1 second, I gotta blow my nose. All right, sorry about that. It ain't nothing like a cold like the one you get from a kid, boy. That shit hit different. I've been dealing with this Jane for I feel like a week and a half now, kicking ass. But I'm getting better. But whew. Want to know why I haven't been doing podcasts or anything? Because she's been a struggle, man. It's been a struggle. Anyway, so he didn't want an offensive head coach because he didn't want anybody taking any of the credit. That's what he's had to deal with Andy Reid. That's been the biggest, drawback to him interviewing is people saying, well, is it you or is it Andy? We can't tell. So we're just going to assume it's Andy. You may be calling in the plays to the headset, but it's Andy Reid, right? So he wants to eliminate that from the equation. Like if it's a defensive head coach, then nobody can get the credit but me. That's number one. Number two, if it's a defensive head coach, he's just going to move out of the way and let you do your thing. He's not going to tell you what to do. He's not going to be looking over your shoulder. You get to come in and pretty much run the show. So if I probably would err on the side of believing that statement's true, that Eric Bieniemy has said to people, this next gig that I get, I would prefer it to be with a defensive head coach so that I don't have to worry about anybody taking any credit for anything that I'm doing. It's all me. If you go to Baltimore, John Harbaugh is a special teams guy. That's what he was before he got the head coach gig. So I don't know if he's going to be necessarily standing in your way or taking any of your credit. But I feel like what could happen in Baltimore, which is why I think Washington, and I know you guys have heard that there's mutual interest between Washington, obviously they're interested on their end, and Eric Bieniemy. I think the reason Washington is so appealing, one, the weapons are outstanding in Washington. Who are we kidding? I mean, there's one thing us talking up our weapons. It's another thing when everybody else acknowledges, yo, y'all got some stuff out there. If you go to Baltimore and you have success, the cop-out for someone not wanting to give you the job is simply, oh, it's just Lamar Jackson. It's the Lamar Jackson effect. They don't have to give you credit if Lamar's out there balling. That's Lamar Jackson. He's already won a league MVP. So you may not get the credit that you're looking for because you took a solid Baltimore offense and you kept it solid, or maybe you made it slightly better. But you still got Lamar Jackson. You take Washington's offense with a second-year quarterback who's only made one career NFL start, and you get that offense humming, and you're all but guaranteed to get yourself a job. So again, I ask, yep, there's definitely a bit of, bro, what's the long-term situation looking like here? If I take this job, because Ron said in an article, one of those articles that I was just taking excerpts from, he said he's been asked this question by, he's interviewed 6 dudes. And he said, I've been asked multiple times, hey man, what's the situation going to be like? I got 2 years left on my deal where I'm already at. Can you guarantee me that I'm going to at least get 2 years out of coming to Washington? And he's like, look, they just told me to conduct business as usual. So that's what I'm doing. That shit ain't good enough. If I'm a dude, like, if I'm Pat Shurmur, I don't give a shit about none of that. I wasn't working last year. So what difference does it make to me, right? 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, I don't care. I was no years last year, right? So I'm not talking about Pat Shurmur. I'm talking about Thomas Brown, talking about Eric Studeville. I'm talking about those guys that may have multiple years left on their deal. Anthony Lynn, multiple years left on their deals. And I'm running a risk of coming to Washington and being terminated after 1 year and then having to look for work again. Where if I just stay where I'm at right now, I'm guaranteed to have at least 2 years. Because the coach that I'm under, he ain't getting fired. Sean McVay ain't getting fired in LA. He might retire, but he ain't getting fired. Kyle Shanahan ain't getting fired in San Francisco. Mike McDaniel isn't getting fired in Miami. So, these guys, they got security. They got job security. So they want to know, am I really, going to have any kind of security if I take this job? And Ron really doesn't have that answer for you. But in the case of Eric Bieniemy, wherever he takes this job, it's a stepping stone. He's looking to use this opportunity to get a head coaching job. And I don't think there's a faster track to doing that than Washington with the options that are available to him. There are only 2 teams left that don't have a offensive coordinator hired. It's Washington and Baltimore. So as far as I'm concerned, I think Washington gives you the best, most direct path to getting what he ultimately wants, which is an opportunity to be a head man in this league. Go to Baltimore, and I can still say that, oh, that's Lamar Jackson. That ain't you. Can't say that in Washington. You take Sam Howell and this offense, and you turn it into a 26-point, a game offensive show. You're going to be in the runnings for a head coaching job next year. Legitimately. No questions asked. There's no more, oh, well, is it you or Andy Reid? That's dead. So I do think he could choose here over Baltimore. And he says, and we'll pay Chase Young with or without 5th-year option. I'd much rather do it with the 5th-year option under your belt. It gives you a lot more flexibility. It gives you a lot more time to negotiate. Let's say he has that breakout season in year 4. Full off season now, really can focus in, can get that work in. He's got to be motivated, man. He hears the noise. He's either going to do one or 2 things with the noise that's being provided for him. Use it as fuel every day that he's working out in the off season to come out and be the best version of himself in 2023. Or he's going to talk that shit he was talking when he had his defense mechanism up, when he was like, football don't define me. I am who I am. If you want to do that shit, then he's going to have 2.5 sacks, if that's the mentality he's going to have. So it's going to go one or 2 ways. Either you're going to use that motivation, all this noise, all the people that want to use the B word, and all the people that don't think you should be you have your 5th-year option picked up. If you're going to use that as motivation, he could have a big year. If you're going to tell me that football doesn't define you and I'm going to be me regardless, then yeah, $2.5 million. 2.5 sacks, maybe. He could have one of those types of seasons. But I think he's going to be the former, not the latter. I think that's how he's mentally, that's how he's constructed. I think his DNA says he's going to go out and bust his ass to prove everybody wrong. So we'll see. Anyway. John Perez. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, JP, writes, I'm putting my damn foot down on this Chase Young needs to go talk. You've been adamant. This is one thing I can say that you have been out in front of for a very long time, and that's Chase Young. You've been pretty much consistent with your stance on him, which is y'all got to chill. And when JP is the voice of reason, when JP is telling y'all to chill, you know the shit is serious. Because JP is usually the one that's damn, blowing a gasket. Where I'm like, yo, JP, chill, bro, chill. Like, JP's like, fire everybody. Sick of this shit. Hey, JP, we only 1-2, though, bro. I don't care, man. Get rid of everybody. I'm sick of this shit. When JP is telling you to calm down, y'all know y'all tripping. He says he ain't going no damn where. End of story. I mean, he's not, theoretically speaking, right now, but nothing's out of bounds. They don't pick up the 5th-year option. He doesn't play well, or at least up to their standards. He's going after next year. He's going after 2023. So we'll see what happens. Let's see. All right, so now we've caught up. Now we can get the comments back on the screen. John Perez, my guy, JP. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, if Ron thinks he has to keep motivating players after he cost us the playoffs by starting Wentz in week 17, then why is he still the coach? Young is the wrong player to roll the dice with like this. So I think where Ron, and look, this is the thing that he's afforded. Ron knows these players. He knows what motivates them, or he should, theoretically speaking. And so you can't treat every guy the same. Like, I'll give you an example. During the season, Ron and Jack Del Rio went out of their way to publicly criticize linebacker Jamin Davis. And after that criticism, he started to play really well. And Ron said, we knew we could do that with him and have it work in the way that it did. We knew we could take it to the media and use it as motivation for him. He was that type of player. He responds to that. Not everybody responds to having their business aired out for everybody to see. So is Chase Young one of those dudes that is motivated by you not picking up his 5th-year option? Or as I mentioned earlier, is he one of those dudes that now has a growing animosity towards you and uses that as motivation, to have a great season, but I'm not coming back to Washington? You can slap the franchise tag on me if you like, but it doesn't matter how many franchise tags you slap on me. I'm not coming back. I'm not signing a long-term deal to stay here. So you got to know who you're dealing with. I don't love it. I don't love that. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Chris, writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the fam. Likewise. Says, we cannot afford to pick up the 5th year on Chase. We have more needs on defense, Mike linebacker, and number 1 corner. Thoughts on Jamel Dean at corner and Tremaine Edmonds at linebacker and free agency? I totally disagree with you, Christopher, or Chris, rather. I've already explained why. So, and I know you probably left that comment a lot earlier after I had already explained myself, but I've already given you reasons why I feel like Chase Young's 5th-year option needs to be picked up. And furthermore, he's not being paid $17 million this year. Okay. That's next year. So your needs at linebacker and corner can still be met even with picking up the 5th-year option. That's not money you have to spend until next year. So again, and there's ways around that. You can set up Daron Payne's contract to where, hey, we're in a much better financial position this year. Don't really know what it's going to look like next year, but if we got to eat Chase's 17.5 and we got to pay, let's say they decide to pay Montez Sweat, still undecided on Chase, so you got to take the 17.5 hit, but you're going to pay Tez. You can set up Daron's contract to where his base in 2024 isn't all that high, which will allow you to fit in a 17.5 for Chase. You can set up that first year of the deal for Montez to where it's peanuts from a base salary standpoint. You don't really start paying that big money till the next year or the year after that. So there's ways around that, but it wouldn't impact our ability to go out and get free agents this year, which is what you're referring to. So I agree. I disagree with the statement anyway. Even if it would have impacted us this year, I would have disagreed. But I disagree even more because it doesn't impact this year's salary cap. That commitment would be for next year. and it would be fully guaranteed $17.5 million next year. That said, Jamel Dean, I told you already, I'm not in the business of spending top dollar on a cornerback if I can get one in the draft, because corner is such a premium position. Like, Jamel Dean isn't elite. He's middle of the road, and you're still going to have to pay him good money to be middle of the road. So, again, and you said number one corner. Jamel Dean isn't a one corner. So, I wouldn't be really interested in a Jamel Dean. But, furthermore, I've already made it abundantly clear with the cornerback situation being what it is in Washington, knowing that we have Benjamin St-Juste and Kendall Fuller already. And I would assume, I'm just going to throw Danny Johnson in there as well because he played so well last year towards the end. Knowing that we got 3 solid corners, and then you drafted, a guy that they want to probably give some more looks to in Christian Holmes, and then you still have Castro Fields and Wild Goose, who I'm assuming they want to give some more looks to as well. I'm not signing a veteran in that particular instance. If I'm spending any cornerback money, it would have been a slot, because the slot doesn't cost you nearly as much as a boundary. But with that said, I've already looked at the slot corners available in free agency, and none of them are to my liking. So, no on Jamel Dean. And that's not just no, that's hell no to Jamel Dean. As for Tremaine Edmonds, I'm open to it. But honestly speaking, I'd much rather, if you're really trying to penny pinch, it sounds like you're worried about saving money, then just re-sign Cole Holcomb. That'll save you a hell of a lot of money. Because if you sign Tremaine Edmonds, you're paying top dollar. He's getting one of those 5 for 83 deals. 5 for 85, 5 for 80 type deals. So I think if you're looking to cut a corner, you might be able to do it at linebacker, because I still feel like you got to draft a linebacker regardless, if not 2. So anyway, I digress. I wouldn't have a problem, but that's a lot of money. I don't know if I'm willing to spend that on a linebacker personally. The Phillies Ace 34. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, the Phillies Ace, writes, my guy, Lou, what's good, buddy? What's going on with you, man? I know you got to be on cloud 9, just enjoying this entire ride, and it culminates on Sunday in either a win or a loss. Either way, it's a successful season for the Eagles, but it'll feel empty if you don't, close it out with a Lombardi. Says, hopefully late Sunday night, the Eagles kick in your door with the Lombardi, knocking over your tables with food and drinks, jumping on your couch, that the rest of the NFC East occupies Ron McCarthy and McCarthy stink. Yeah, I hope that doesn't take place, but if it does, I won't mind. I'll actually laugh, and that'll be funny. Kicking the door, waving the 4-4. All I'm screaming is, Philly, don't hit me no more. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But if it does, it'll be because you earned it. It'll be because you guys earned it. It's been a hell of a ride. That is for certain. Let's see. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy, JP, writes, Howell and Bieniemy would be a match made in heaven with these receivers. And I was also one of those few people who held out hope Snyder was going to be gone. That'd be a great pairing. At least, I can't say that. I can't say it'll be a great pairing. It's one that I would love to see. It's one that I would love to see because I think Bieniemy, having worked with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, has an idea of what to do with a quarterback with the skill sets of a Sam Howell, right? Thing I'm most excited about though is the weaponry that we have at our disposal. A guy like Antonio Gibson, I just feel like he needs to be unlocked. I felt like Scott Turner, threw him in the cell, right? Like he was away from Gen Pop and he was in lockdown 23 hours a day. And every once in a while they would let him out for a possession to play, and that was the 1 hour that you get out of your cell. But I'm just ready for him to come back to Gen Pop. And look, maybe he gets some special treatment and he starts to get a couple of activities, and maybe he gets a job and now he's working in the library. Like, I don't like him being locked up the way that he was last year. And I thought that was all Scott Turner. Don't tell me that this guy's a weapon and then you get scared and you throw him away and you put him in maximum security lockup, and you got this guy spending 23 hours a day on the sideline, not getting reps, not getting the rock, because he's a weapon. If he's a weapon of mass destruction, let's see it. I think Eric Bieniemy may be able to unlock him, similar to the way we've seen Jerick McKinnon utilized, Clyde Edwards-Helaire utilized in Kansas City. That's kind of what I'm excited about, is seeing all these weapons potentially. Cole Turner, Logan Thomas potentially having an opportunity to get the ball. Like, our tight ends were so unproductive last year that you would think we didn't have shit. We didn't have any talent. That was not true. They just weren't utilized. It's a lot of our offense that I felt like was locked up. And I think a guy like Eric Bieniemy may be able to unlock them. As far as the ownership is concerned, look, I want him gone at just as fast as the next man does. But I'm not tripping over it. As long as it gets done, I'm good. The sooner the better. Don't get me wrong. He can't get out of here fast enough. With that said, if it takes 2 weeks, if it takes 2 months, whatever, just make sure it happens. That's all I'm on at this point. I've waited 23 years. I can wait another month or two, okay? Just make sure that the shit happens. All right. Mr. Ron B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Mr. Ron B writes, assuming Bieniemy is the guy, does Rivera truly allow him to upgrade the offense or set limits on what he can ultimately do, i.e. run the ball? I don't think Ron is gonna, like, the 2-to-1 ratio statement, I think, was a byproduct of circumstance. Like, if Heineke's going to be your quarterback, if Wentz struggling the way that he was is going to be your quarterback, then you're going to have to run the football to protect the guy under center. Because the more that guy throws the ball, the more likely it is he's going to make a mistake. I think if you get a new offensive coordinator in here, Ron is going to allow that guy to be whoever he's going to be, to start, right? To start out. Now, if Bieniemy comes in here and he's a little too pass heavy and Sam Howell's turning it over, he may go to him and say, hey, let's run the ball a little bit more, Let's settle down this young second-year quarterback by running the football a little bit more. But I wouldn't anticipate Ron saying, hey, you see that Week 18 game against Dallas where he was 11 of 19? Yeah, that's what we want to do. You know, let's try to keep the passing attempts under 20, if at all possible. Let's run it 30 times. Let's only throw it 19 times. I don't think that's what Ron's telling him. And you're not going to get Eric Bieniemy by telling him that's our mode of strategy, right? That's how we want to attack teams. Barely throwing it and running it 2 times as many times as we throw it. Nah. So I do think he's going to have free reins, which is why he wants a defensive-minded head coach, because he doesn't want anybody telling him what he can or can't do. He don't want anybody putting any limitations on his offense, and he don't want anybody getting the credit that he feels like he deserves. So this would be a great fit for him. LT, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. LT writes, can Washington Commanders reach the heights Philly did anytime soon? The league, specifically the NFC, is set up for parity. So yes, theoretically speaking, you get rid of Dan Snyder and anything's possible. With Dan here, no, that it wasn't attainable. You know, more and more is coming out, you know, and has come out throughout the course of the season, but it's all starting to make sense with Dan. You know, for the Dan stands out there. I don't know how many of those even exist, but there are some. Well, Dan just wants to win. Okay, there are ways to go about that, but you know, at this point, Dan is who he is, and he's not going to change. Even in year 22, 23, he's still making the same dumbass mistakes he was making in year 1. Still having a heavy influence over who the quarterback is. So, you know what that rant that Ron went on when he said, I watched the film. I looked at I had the sheets of paper. You know, I watched the film. I looked at the analytics. Carson was my decision, because the article that was written in the ESPN article that was written literally the day that was released, the day of that Bears game in week 6, I believe it was, said that Dan was the one that went out and got Carson Wentz. And you know what? That makes sense to me. Why? Because remember when Dan went in front of the gaming commission, the Maryland Gaming Commission, and he told them, it was, first of all, it was a weird ass prepared speech that he had. And in that speech, he said that we finally have us a quarterback. And I'm like, hadn't played a game yet, but we finally got us a quarterback. What a dumbass. That's why he was so confident, because that was his guy. He handpicked Carson Wentz. Anyway, get rid of Dan, and Sam Howell turns out to be really good. Eric Bieniemy is our offensive coordinator, and he turns out to be really good, or whomever gets the job. Doesn't have to be Eric Bieniemy, but I've told you I'm speaking that into existence. So Eric Bieniemy comes in here and does a hell of a job. Defense is lights out with some of the upgrades at corner and linebacker. Chase Young comes back. He's a stud next year. And all of a sudden, yeah, we find ourselves right in the playoffs. Now you got a shot. Anything can happen. Chase Young Burner, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, I saw your draft short on Clark Phillips III. He fits what we actually need, which is a slot cornerback. Watched a lot of Pac-12, and was thoroughly impressed with him. That was some fun tape to watch. And I actually like CP3 outside, not inside. He can play both, and he's a dog, and I wouldn't mind him in my slot at all. But I actually think his best football is played on the outside. And so if I'm drafting him, I'm not drafting him with the idea of just sticking him in the slot, and that's that. I'm drafting him with every intention of putting him outside. And then if a guy travels, he can kick inside, whatever the case may be. But his best football to me was played on the outside. So I would prefer him to go out there first and show me he can't do it, and then I'll kick him inside. But to your point, we're not necessarily desperate for boundary corners, but I don't know about you, but I don't trust Benjamin St-Juste at this, current moment to stay healthy. That's 2 years in a row. Same with Sam Cosmi, 2 years in a row. Same with Chase Roullier, 2 years in a row. Like, at some point, you just like, all right, it's not a matter of if, it's when are you going to get hurt and for how long. So in saying that, you better have some good ass depth at corner outside the boundary side of things, because you saw how that impacted us when he didn't play. Danny came in and did a bang up job, but it impacted us, especially in the 49ers game, or rather I want to say it was the second Giants game. Anyway, I was really impressed with him as well. Really like his game. JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. JP writes, me personally, we need to stop being cheap and start spending real top dollar on free agents. Free agency is for putting you over the top. Free agency is not for building your football team. Had we come off of a 10-win wild card eliminated season, yeah, go out and spend that money. You're one step away from being in the NFC Championship game and hoisting a Lombardi. You got a taste of the playoffs. Your players know what that atmosphere is like. 2020 was the last time we made the playoffs. There's still some guys here from that playoff game, obviously, but they didn't get the real taste of playoff ball. There was no fans. So that environment wasn't electric. It was sterile. So I don't know if they still got a true sense of what playoff ball is all about. It's invaluable experience. You can't replicate it. So in my mind, if you're going to go out and get free agents, you should be getting quantity, not quality. Unless because it'd be one thing if we just had one or two holes. Okay, fine. Go out and spend. And again, teams with one or two holes, glaring needs, are the ones that are one or two pieces away, that are right there, that made the playoffs the last 2 or 3 years. They just can't get over the hump. So maybe this guy, that's what Buffalo did. They went out and spent top dollar on Von Miller. Why? Because they thought he was the missing piece. They thought he was the reason 13 seconds happened last year. So they said, we go get this guy, he'll solve all of our problems. And he was doing that the first, 6-7 weeks of the season before he got injured. We're not there. So I'm not sure what a Tremaine Edmonds really does for you. You get what I'm saying? You're better off going with David Long than Tremaine Edmonds. Somebody that'll be a little bit more cost efficient. So you want us to stop being cheap and start playing top dollar? Win football games. Win football games. The Phillies Ace 34. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Greatly appreciate you. writes, does coaches like Sirianni make Ron, McCarthy, and Shanahan look bad? Does Dallas regress more next year? If Eagles win Super Bowl, Washington the only loss for Hurts. And there'll be fans that take solace in that. I've taken solace in that amongst the super friends, but I'm not going bragging to the rest of the league. We were the only team to beat them. They still won the Super Bowl. We still didn't make the playoffs. Doing that, all it does is invite Eagles fans to say, yeah, that was your Super Bowl. And shut up. Shut that dumbass shit up. No, that wasn't nobody damn Super Bowl. We were just happy we beat y'all. We were 11-point underdogs. You were undefeated. Yeah, that was a big ass win. We didn't make the playoffs because we beat y'all. That was y'all Super Bowl. Shut up. I ain't talking to you in particular. I'm talking about all the people that like to say that stupid ass shit. Yeah, that's your Super Bowl. Shut up. Sirianni's a good coach. And he's got swag. And yeah, he makes these old curmudgeons look bad. Like Ron, for instance. Ron's the anti-Nick Sirianni. But you don't have to be Nick Sirianni to be successful in this league. You know, but it's probably a lot fun. It's probably funner when Nick Sirianni is your head coach. That's for damn sure. Anyway, I digress. That is the final comment there. And so we're going to get out of here. That was a fun show. A lot of good stuff there. I knew it was going to be one of those type of shows because of all the topics that we had to discuss. Look forward to chopping it up with you tomorrow. Come hell or high water, I'm going to get that podcast off tomorrow because Super Bowl time. There is no more time. So I'm going to have my Super Bowl extravaganza tomorrow. Give you my breakdown of what I think is going to occur. Give you my winner. I haven't changed. So I already told you who I thought was going to win the game. Spoiler alert, I haven't changed my mind. So I'll tell you why. And I think I've already done that multiple times, but I'll do it again. But we'll do that tomorrow. If you're a Washington fan, I'll just let you know. I'll let you in on this. Going out of town next week. And thus, I know they're going to hire a coach next week. My hope is they do it within the first 3 days of the week. I'll be in my office Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I will not be in my office Thursday or Friday. And thus, I will be pissed if I waited this entire time and then they make a decision on Thursday. I think it's going to come in the first 3 days because they're going to interview Bieniemy on Monday. You know, whether they win or lose the Super Bowl, they're going to interview Eric Bieniemy on Monday. And after you interview him, you don't really need that much time to make a decision. It's just if you want Bieniemy and you offer him the job, he's got to make a decision. Either he's going to say yes or no. And if he says no, or he goes to Baltimore and they don't let him leave and he ends up agreeing to terms with them, then you go to plan B. You already know who that guy is. So I expect this to be done no later than Wednesday next week. But either way, we're going to be live next Wednesday. Whether they hire an offensive coordinator on Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever, we're still going to be live that night, Wednesday night next week. So I look forward to chopping it up with y'all then. Of course, we'll be watching the Super Bowl. I know most of you will be rooting for the Eagles to lose. I'm just rooting for a good game. And so we'll break that all down after the game has met its conclusion. And that should be a lot of fun. I think we're going to get a good game. So I'm not really too concerned about that. But that's all I care about is making sure we get a good game. So anyway, I digress. You guys take care. And I will see most of you tomorrow for the Louie T Network podcast. For the rest of you, I'll see you on Sunday night for Super Bowl overtime. And for the rest of you, I'll see you next week, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We'll come back and we'll reconvene. And I'll have a bevy of topics to discuss. Probably drop a couple of uploads leading up to Wednesday's live stream. And obviously, if we hire a coach, I'm going live immediately once the news hits. So you know where to find me. In any event, it's the command post. You know what it is. Post up and take command. I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Until next time, y'all take care. God bless and good night.